Oh man, I gotta start. I'm glad I'm only 3 minutes into the video. Thank you, Xavier, for saving me, cause I never put the mic on. Oh man, oh man. Good thing I'm gonna be editing this into color sections. So, ayo, hello, Fantastics. It's Mr. Clintastik, and I am here after 3 to 4 minutes of rambling with no audio to restart and discuss my thoughts on Murders at Karlov Manor. This is a limited set review that focuses on draft and sealed in Magic the Gathering. So yeah, I essentially said this is focusing on limited, and limited focuses on draft and seal. Draft is a format. You get 6 packs. You open up a pack. You pick a card that you like, and when everyone picks a card they like, you pass that pack to the right, and so everybody get a new pack from the person that's already open. You do the process again. You pick a card you like. You pass the pack, and you do that until all the packs are empty. It's not necessarily 6 packs. It's like three or whatnot, however many is for the event. It's 3 packs. So everyone gets 3 packs. You crack open a pack, pick a card, pass, pass. Sealed, you get all of your cards at once. And sealed is typically, I believe, 6 packs. I think that's what I'm thinking of. And you open all of those packs and you build your deck. And yeah, so it's not like constructed where you have the cards ahead of time. You get to make like a dedicated strategy to a degree. No, it's right on the fly. You build with what you have and go. So yeah, now that that's out of the way, let's start with the blue set review. First, we have Intrude on the Mind, a 5 mana, 3 generic, 2 blue instant. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library and separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Create a 0/0 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and then put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature. No, for each card put into your graveyard this way. I do not like this. I don't like the cards where I have to give the opponent the opportunity to pick or make a decision like that, make 2 piles. I never even make the piles right myself. I feel like this is a very big brain card, and it's not something that I'll be willing to do like in most situations. I'd rather just play a 3 mana, draw 2 cards, you know, rather than a 5 mana, make 2 piles, give them the option to pick this and that. It's too convoluted. So I'll leave that for the big brain players. For me, I don't even put this at a 3. If I'm doing a 1 out of 5 scale, or yeah, I'm still debating. It should be 1 out of 5 or 0 out of 5, because I feel like 1 is still kind of playable. I feel like a 0 is unplayable. Like, do not play this card in your deck. But typically, like with Untapped GG, I think they just go out of a 1 out of 5 system, which may be easier for people to keep up with. Well, I'm gonna try that for now. So I wouldn't even put this at a 3. This is not something that I want to play in most cases. I'm gonna put it like a 1.5. I don't think it's a complete dud, but it's not great for me. Next, we have Conspiracy Unraveler, 7 mana, 5 generic, 2 blue, creature Sphinx Detective with flying, 6/6. You may collect evidence 10 rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. 7 mana, 6/6 just doesn't come off great to me, even though it has flying. It depends on if the format is slow enough for this to really hit the board. And even if it does, do you really want to exile cost 10 mana worth of spells from your graveyard? Will you even have that to do to cast a spell that you could just play from hand? So, unfortunately, Conspiracy Unraveler, I feel like some people could play it. I don't think it's completely unplayable, which that's why I got to see like 1 is. So I think I'll put this at like a 2, and I may upgrade Intrude on the Mind to a 2. I don't think they're completely unplayable cards. I just think for the mana cost and for the ability, they're overcosted for a format like Limited. All right. Next we have Reenact the Crime, 4 mana instant, 1 generic, 3 blue. Exile target non-land card in a graveyard that was put there from anywhere this turn. Copy it. You may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. Okay. All right. So yeah, reenact the crime. Like I said, 4 mana, one generic, 3 blue, instant. Exile target non-land card in a graveyard that was put there from anywhere this turn. So it could be milled there, discarded, wherever. You copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. This is gonna be absolutely freaking busted. This is gonna be busted. Now I don't. It's not necessarily gonna be busted in limited. I got to see what the rest of the set is. But in other formats, what do you mean? I just milled something like super big into the graveyard and I'm getting to play it for 4 mana. And it's from target non land card in a graveyard? So you're telling me there's a chance I might drop your boy and then copy it from your graveyard and play it back? I'm getting ahead of myself. Reenact the Crime for Limited is not that great. It's along the lines of the previous two cards in blue. Cool. They're really cool cards. But in limited, you're trying to get your opponent to zero. That is the goal. That is the goal. That's what we're trying to do. So in limited, I think this is probably a two. I think people can try it out, see if they like it. But I don't think this is the card that's going to necessarily win you games unless you're big brain. And maybe that's what they're trying to say with blue. Like, you got to be pretty smart to pull these off in limited to me. Now, compared to white, white in this set, no brainers. Like, it took what? One, two, three, four. It took 5 cards off top for I'm like, I don't think this is something I really want to say is even a three. But the first 3 cards are mid in blue for limited. So right now, white is winning for limited, especially in their mythic and rare slots. Let's see what the rest has going. Coveted Falcon, 3 mana, 1 generic, 2 blue, artifact creature, bird. Flying, whenever it attacks, gain control of target permanent you own but don't control. You can disguise it for 2. No, you can flip it. Wait. Am I misunderstanding? Like, disguise, from what I understood, you play it for 3, but you can flip it over for the disguise cost. So all of the disguise creatures are going to be 3 mana if you want to have it come down as a disguised creature. But the disguise cost is what flips it over, which could be less than 3, as in the case of Coveted Falcon. When it's turn face up, target opponent gains control of any number of target permanents you control. Huh? What? Do I have to say this? When Coveted Falcon is turn face up, target opponent gains control of any number of target permanents you control. Draw a card for each one they gain control of this way. Why the heck would I do that? Why would I do that? Why would I ever do this? Someone please explain to me. Why would I ever want my opponent to have the opportunity to gain control of my permanents based off of me flipping my own creature over? Just so I can draw cards. Oh, I heard the like or the follow. Thank you, whoever that is. I can't see it on the screen right now. But I'll give you a shout out in a moment. But yeah, no, I'm not a fan. Coveted Falcon is it's kind of like like a 3 mana 1/4 in blue with flying. Cool. The upside, you gain control of target permanent you own but don't. Cool, I guess. It's like, why would they be controlling my stuff anyway? Then I can run it out as a three and then have the opportunity to, my disguise, I'm popping out. But when I pop out, you get to take my things? Bruh. The fact that that's on the card is upsetting me. That is upsetting me. A three mana 1/4, it's fine. Um, it's fine, but it's not exciting. And I think that's really the only thing that is going for this card. I think it's like a 2.5, just being a three mana 1/4. But at the moment, this is the fact that this text is even on the card. I'm like, get this out of my face. Sheesh. Sheesh. Anyway, Case of the Ransacked Lab. 3 mana enchantment case. Instant and sorceries you cast cost 1 less to cast. Okay, cool. To solve, you've cast 4 or more instants and sorcery spells this turn. Okay. And solved, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, draw a card. I give this like a 1. Like, you really, in my opinion, you don't want to be playing this. The first ability on this case, you reduce your instants and sorceries, but you want to be playing creatures, in my opinion. And to solve, you've cast 4 or more instants and sorcery this turn. Limited, you're only running 40 cards. And if you're running 40 cards, you're running like what? Anywhere from 12 to 17, 18 creatures. You're not running that many instants and sorceries anyways in a typical limited deck. And then it's not even if the last part said copy that spell, cool. I can respect that. But whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, draw a card. Don't play this. I could be wrong, and we'll see if someone plays this against me and just wreck my face because of this card. I'll take my words back. But right now, I have to give this probably one of the first cards I have to give a straight up 1 to, like, not playable, my guy. Anyway, next we have Forensic Gadgeteer, 3 mana creature, Vildalkin Artificer Detective. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate. That's real nice. That's real nice. Activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. Okay. This effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. So it can't reduce it to 0. So it's always going to be at least 1 mana. And I think that clause is great. It's a 3 mana 2/3 creature. The detective creature type is kind of relevant. So maybe there's white blue detectives going on. Because I think there's a card in white where detectives was pretty relevant. I think it was a case, if I remember correctly. Should have had my notes out. Let's see. Yes, case of the pilfered proof. When a detective ETBs under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up, put a 1/1 counter on it. So maybe white blue detectives could be a thing. And this gives clue tokens. Yeah. Just kind of trying to keep in mind the different cards we've already went over, see if anything kind of pairs well with each other for the limited set. But yeah, I like this. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate. Now, depending on how many artifacts we find relevant, it's gonna like gauge how strong this card is. A 3 mana 2/3. Honestly, I'd prefer to have a 3 mana 3/3. It could be a flyer. This isn't something that I'm gonna want to necessarily jam in every deck. I don't think it's unplayable because it's a creature, that you can attack with, maybe win a game or two or something. So I'm gonna give it like a 2. Um, and if you get to build around it, I think it can go up to a 3 at least. Next, we have Lost in the Maze. It is an X cost spell, 2 blue, enchantment with flash. When Lost in the Maze enters the battlefield, tap X target creatures, put a stun counter on each of those creatures you don't control. Tap creatures you control have hexproof. Now this is solid. This is solid. Out of all the cards we've seen today in blue, I think this has the most. potential. This is probably the best one. I'll give it a three off top because it operates as a removal spell. And it can target multiple things, and it's flash, and it's an enchantment, so it can potentially be. No, it can't be bounced because of the X cost, but because we do have, you gotta remember, we have our cat down here, and it's like, why do we want to bounce another permanent of our own to our hand with the Forum Familiar? Well, maybe to get an ability like this again. Lost in the Maze. You tap those creatures, you stun them for a turn, and you can use this as a defensive play to give your creatures hexproof. I think this is like limited speaking. This is great. It's automatically a three for me because it defends you and protects you at the same time, and it has replayability. This could be better than a three, but it's not necessarily going to win you the game. It's solid. I would run two. I would probably run even three copies of Lost in the Maze. And yeah, yeah, it's definitely a three. 3.5 maybe. It's something I definitely want to play in my build and see if I can get like more value out of it. All right, just want to give a quick shout out to the boys. How y'all doing today? Samaj, Kyle, Xavier, thank you for pulling up. Thank you, thank you. Let's see. I can't see my notifications for the for follows and subscribers at the moment. So when I get an opportunity, I'll adjust that and give my shout outs. All right. Next we have Prof's Edict Memory. 2 mana, that's a one generic and a blue legendary enchantment. When Prof's Edict Memory enters the battlefield, draw a card. Okay. You have no maximum hand size. Okay. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've drawn more than one card this turn, put X 1/1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the number of cards you've drawn this turn minus one. So much text. So it's a 2 mana draw one card. No maximum hand size. Okay, I guess. And then if you pair it with other draw spells, if you happen to draw cards yourself or whatnot, um, you get to put 1/1 counters on target creature. In limited, I don't know how good this is. I think it's playable. I do. I think it's playable. Especially if we have cards that draws cards naturally. It's just over time, just like bing bing, we're putting counters where we feel like. Wait. Okay, yeah. It's always minus one so that it doesn't count the card that you naturally draw. So as long as you intend to draw an extra card that turn, at least you'll be getting X 1/1 counters. So if it happens to be two cards, you get two 1/1 counters, three. No. Yeah, two cards, blase blase. It's just minus one to account for that one that you naturally draw every turn. I like the card. I don't think it's something I want to. I mean, well, my thing is, say you ran three of these, right? And boom, you play the first one, you draw a card, you play a creature. You play another one of these, you draw a card, you put a counter on another creature. But it's a legendary enchantment, so it can't even stack. It can't even stack. Sorry, Prof. You're only going to want to run one, maybe two of these, and it's not necessarily going to even win you the game. I'm going to give it like a 2.5 just because I like the card. Just because I like the card, but I don't think it's something you should be picking over a lot of other cards. It actually, I got to give it a 2, respectfully. And it has to kind of prove itself to go up in rank. Because right now I'm like, by itself, it's not doing enough. Anyways, next we have Steam Chorus Scholar. 3 mana, 2 generic, and a blue creature, weird detective. Keeping detective types in mind for the creature type. Flying Vigilance, okay, okay. When it ETBs, draw 2 cards, okay. Discard 2 cards unless you discard an instant or sorcery or a creature card with flying, okay. And it's a 2/2. Flying Vigilance, 2/2. Solid, I'll play it. I'll give it a 3. Honestly, I might give it a 3.5, but a 3 mana 2/2 flyer, it's not that powerful, but it lets you draw cards. So yeah, I'll definitely want to play multiples of these. Like, it's always going to give you the opportunity to kind of rummage early game, especially. Vigilant. So yeah, it's definitely a three. Um, and it might go up to like a 3.5 because of the card draw. So yeah, I'll get this a 3.5. I'll pick this over most cards when I see it. Flying Vigilant, Rummaging. It might even be a four. I think I've seen so many bad cards in blue for limited that I don't want to oversell a card, but this card may actually be like way better than I'm giving it credit for. And it's a detective. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 for now, but it could possibly be a 4. This could be way better. Next, we have Cryptic Coat, 3 mana, 2 generic and a blue. Artifact equipment. When it ETBs, cloak the top card of your library. So that's what the thing with Cloak is. Cloak can cloak any card. You know, it doesn't have to be a creature that's disguised. Then attach Cryptic Cloak to it. Equipped creature gets +1, +0, and can't be blocked. Pay 2, a 1, and a blue. Return Cryptic Coat to its owner's hand. Okay. You play it. You get a spell off the top of your library or a card off the top of your library. It comes out as a basically a 3/2. Then you can pay 2 to do this again. So for 2 mana, you're able to disguise the top of your library as a cloak essentially and make it a little bit beefier and do it over and over again. I like it. I like this. I like this. For 3 mana too. So typically when you disguise something, it's 3 mana to put it on the board face down. So this is the disguise cost at 3 mana. You cloak the spell, so it doesn't have to be. It could be a land that you're doing off the top of your library. Just turn into a creature. Excellent. You know, if you don't need any more lands, um, it could be an instant or sorcery maybe that you didn't need. It could be any card, and it becomes a creature. It turns all of your cards basically into creatures. If they weren't creatures, reduces the cost of your disguise cost initially, and you just recur it. I, I think this might be like a four. Like these two right here. This is not bad. If we have some good graveyard cards for Scholar, I know it won't be bad. Cryptic Coat, I gotta give it a four. I think this is. I'm not gonna say it's necessarily better than Scholar, but it is. It's not even a build around. Like you could run no disguise creatures and just use this to. Oh, I just play this three, make 2/2, 2/2, 2/2. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 because, like I said, I don't think it's better than Scholar, but I think it's really, really good. And as I get to see them in at work or in play, or get to play them myself, I can see them going up to a four. I don't see these kind of going down in value for me. All right, next we have Candlestick, one blue artifact, clue equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has whenever this creature attacks. Surveil 2. You can pay 2, sacrifice it, draw a card, and it equips for 2. I'm not a big fan of Surveil in limited. You know, like, well, with that evidence card, with evidence, dang it, mechanic, losing my words, with the evidence mechanic, Surveil may get really good because then you can just throw your cards in there and then get the value. But I don't necessarily play well that way, especially in a limited format. So I don't think I'll want to personally be surveilling. I like the ability to tap target creature way more than that surveil ability here. Like wrench, I think was at least. I said I think wrench was maybe like a two. I don't have to play it. It just has a great ability. It might even be a 3 because you can use it to tap creatures later. This, kind of like 1.5, 1.75. I don't think it's totally terrible, but it's between that not playable to maybe slightly playable. To be honest, I think I'm gonna adjust my scale to 0 to 5 because I feel like 0 really represents like don't play this at all, whereas 1 says okay, well it's there. Yeah, I'm gonna stick to that because it just makes more sense to me. Because this isn't a 0, but this isn't like a 2 where I'm just like oh okay cool. No, this is a 1. I think this set the standard. This is a 1. You can play it if you want to. It's gonna give you some value, but it's not going to just be the game breaking, back breaking card that you want. So, next we have Sudden Setback, 4 mana, 2 generic, 2 blue instant. The owner of target spell or non land permanent puts it on top or bottom of their library. Why is this uncommon at 4 mana? I think I can pull up 1,000 4 mana bounce spells, that puts it on top of the library. Yeah, not sure what was going on with that. I think OBS just crashed. So I'll give people a few minutes to get kind of back in here. I'm going to adjust my video settings. Okay, for sure, for sure. Welcome back, welcome back. Yeah, OBS just crashed on us, but we're still going to be great in here. I'm still going to review the set and whatnot. But yeah, I guess the MTG guys did not appreciate what I had to say about Sudden Setback. It's an okay spell, but for 4 mana, I want to blow that up. I want to exile something. I want to get it out of the game completely. White does it. White just gets it out of the game. Black can get it out of the game, can exile it. Green not so much, blue not so much. But white and black can do it, and red not so much. But those other colors are gonna let you do these things for way cheaper. I think green's gonna give you like a 2 mana fight spell. You know, red's gonna give you a 1 mana deal 2 to 3 damage spell. Uh, and blue even has just bounce a creature for 1 to 2 mana. So sudden setback for me is just looking really bad here. For the mana cost, I think it's a respectable card. I don't think it's a 0. I think it's a 1 though, in the context of you want other removal spells other than sudden setback. You don't want to just give them like even if they're just redrawing the card, it's like well they still get to play it again. And in the instance of oh well that card is actually like a great card to replay. It has a great ETB. You don't want to do that again. So I'm gonna put sudden setback at a 1 based off of our new 0 to 5 number scaling, and I'm gonna say you can play it if you want. It's not unplayable, but it's not great. Next we have Furtive Courier, 3 mana, 2 generic and a blue, creature Merfolk Advisor. Furtive Courier can't be blocked as long as you've sacrificed an artifact this turn. So you can sacrifice your clue tokens. Uh oh. Let's see. Bear with me. Okay. I'm a juggler. I have to operate multiple things at once, so yeah, I make it work. Anyway, so Furtive Courier, 3 mana, 2 generic and a blue. Furtive Courier can't be blocked as long as you've sacrificed an artifact this turn. Whenever Furtive Courier attacks, draw a card, discard a card. It's a 3/2. So, okay, cool. I like it. It has potential unblockability, so this is, to me, at least a 3. Simply based on the fact if you sacrifice a clue token or whatnot, you're swinging in for 3, and a lot of times people are gonna hate that. It's like, oh man, I set up my board, they can't get across. Wait, Shock, they can get across for three. And they can do it multiple times, potentially. So I think this is at least a three. I would definitely run multiple copies of it. And it gives you the draw power, so it might go up to a 3.5. My only issue is that I wish it kind of brought a clue with it. Like, that's, I think, would be the difference between like a 3.5 rating for me and a 4 with this particular card. The unblockability would almost make me be like, okay, cool, it's automatically a 4, but that unblockability is so conditional that I'm just like, I'm not going to get it every time. So I would normally leave it at 3, but the fact that when it attacks, you draw a card, discard, I think that's enough to bring it on up to that 3.5. And if this shows some work, it could go up to a 4 or greater. Like if we find out that we're just going to always have these clue tokens on hand, cool, but I don't really see that being the case. So I'm going to give this a 3.5 for now, but I think this is a really solid 3-2 unblockable creature, pseudo unblockable. Next we have Surveillance Monitor, 4 mana, 3 generic and a blue, Veldalkin Detective, relevant creature type. When Surveillance Monitor enters the battlefield, you may collect evidence 4. Whenever you collect evidence, create a 1/1 colorless Doctor artifact creature token with flying. It's a 3/3. So a 4 mana 3/3, which is not even that great. 4 mana 3/3 on the ground, which is not even that great. You can collect evidence 4. So, 4 mana 3/3 that comes to the battlefield, exiles mana 4 or greater from our yard, and no matter what, it only gives us a 1/1 flyer. I like the fact that it's potentially a 2 for 1 card, and even more if you have a collect evidence deck. I'm not doing all that. I'm not trying to set this up especially just to get the 1/1 token. I'm putting this, it might be right there with sudden setback. It's like it's there. I don't want to play it. I might just give this like a 1.5 simply off the build around potential. Because if no, I just don't know if you're going to even have enough evidence. I don't know if you're going to have enough evidence to really pop off because you got to have permanence in the yard. I think this is a 4 mana 3/3 is what we're looking at here on the ground. And that to me is just not exciting. Is not a 0, but I'm going to put it at 1. I'm not going to be looking to pick this card up at all. At all. Next we have Living Conundrum, 5 mana, 4 generic and a blue, elemental with hexproof. What? Good old hexproof? They've been punking us with Ward for a few years now. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, hexproof is too strong, and giving us like Ward abilities. And this is a Ward bound set right here. Like, there's a lot of Ward going on, especially with the disguises and whatnot. So to see hexproof is almost a little. It's scary, but refreshing at the same time. So, if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, skip that draw instead. You're not milling yourself out or decking yourself out. Hmm. As long as there are no cards in your library, Living Conundrum has base power and toughness 10/10 and has flying and vigilance. What? 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 So a 5 mana 2/5 flyer isn't nothing to write home about until you give it hexproof. Okay, and then you give it the ability in limited, especially. We're only required to run 40 cards. So if we're able to stall you out and we get down to 0 cards in the library, we have a 10/10 flying vigilance hexproof. And that's not impossible to make happen. As we talked about with the surveil card, if that's something you're trying to really pull off, Candlestick can go from a 1 to a potential 2. You want to have those cards in the yard for a creature like Living Conundrum. Granted, it's a 5 mana card. I would probably run 2, maybe 3 if I knew this was my top end. If I knew this was my top end, my goal, because they're not going to be able to really like blast past it in a lot of situations at a 2/5. They're not going to be able to just remove it off the board with an instant of sorcery unless I have to sacrifice it. So if I'm building around this, because I this is instantly a 3 for me, even at 5 mana, I would definitely run at least 3, 4. I would run as many of these as I could and kind of just try to stay alive. Because you're going to have a board of hexproof blockers that have so much in-game value for you. You start drawing cards and whatnot. Yeah, this is. I'll have to see it at work. I'm gonna give it a. I think I'm gonna give it a 4. I think this is a game-winning card right here. Like, even if you just drop it as a 2/5 on the ground, hexproofer, you start equipping it with certain things. Say there's something that gives us lifelink. I don't know if I remember seeing one of those, but any kind of modification to this card is just gonna be great value. I'm gonna give it a 4 for now. If I see that the mana cost is too expensive for the set, I will reduce it to a 3 because that's really where I'm leaning towards. But the hex proof is just like we don't see that too often. So yeah, I'm gonna give that a 4 for now. This is one of the better blue cards I've seen. Next we have Agency Outfitter. It's 6 mana, 4 generic, 2 blue. Sphinx Detective, flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library. Your no, You may search your graveyard, hand, and or library for a card named Magnifying Glass and or a card named Thinking Cap and put them onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. Huh. Magnifying Glass. Okay, it's an artifact. Colorless. Okay. Probably should just pull it up on the screen. And Thinking Cap. I'm guessing Thinking Cap is also one, but Magnifying Glass is three generic. It can give you a generic, and you can pay for it, tap, investigate. That's not. It's not bad at all, especially if you're getting it for free. Thinking Cap is a one generic artifact. Equipped creature gets +1/+2. Equipped detective for 1. Equipped creature for 3. These are both great. Yeah, my ratings are based on draft and sealed. Yeah, they're only based on draft and sealed. If they want ratings for other formats, like what I would think for Commander or Constructed, I would really have to sit back and see. But I don't know if this season I'm gonna be doing much Constructed. I feel like I'm gonna be doing a lot of draft. So yeah, Magnifying Glass ramps you and lets you draw cards through the Investigate feature. Thinking Cap pumps your creature by 1 and 2. I mean, +1/+2. This is a 6 mana 4/3. Yeah, fly. I gotta give this a 2. The mana cost is too expensive. It's only a 4/3. It's easily removable. Even if you get those two artifacts out of your deck, the thing is, you probably already played them. There's only 40 cards, and you're probably not going to have too many multiple copies. And even if you did, are you only running those multiple copies for this guy? They're not winning you the game. I like the fact that it's a 4/3 flyer, but at 6 mana, that's really, really tough. It's not something I'm going to want to run like multiple copies of because of the mana cost, especially. So I can't put it at 3. I got to put it at 2. And honestly, if I don't see this on the board too often, it's going to fall down to a 1 or maybe even a 0 just simply off the mana cost alone. I'll have to really see this pick up some games and do better than the 2 rating I'm giving it now, but we shall see. Next, we have Eliminate the Impossible, 2 mana, 1 generic and a blue instant. Investigate. Creatures your opponents control get negative 2-0 until end of turn. If any of them are suspected, they are no longer suspected. I like that. That's hot. That is hot. Okay. So it's not something I'm going to say, yeah, I got to have like two, three copies of this yet. I got to see how many suspect creatures that really enters the battlefield. Like, if suspect is an issue, because menace is a problem, and to give it to any creature is like, oh no. So this lets you create a clue, which generates an artifact. It gives you a way to sack artifacts for the creature we talked about earlier, where if you sack an artifact, it gets unblockable. That gives your creature negative 2-0, so you have potential um, to win in combat all of a sudden because it does it to all the creatures. And if they happen to have suspected creatures and think they're going to get menaced through, you take that away, all at the cost of two smooth blue mana. I feel like this is one of the cards they would have put out before, and they would have just said investigate. That's it. That's it. That's all it would have said. It would have been like investigate. But they're like, no, we're gonna do a few things. I think this is quite powerful, actually. You know what? I might even give it a three because just being able for two to investigate, I think is pretty strong. Drawing the card and making an artifact, taking suspect away. I think this is all good things. I'm gonna give it a like a 2.5 because it's not necessarily winning you the game. I feel like a three for me is something that's like, okay, cool. I might, in the worst case scenario, be able to ride this on to victory. You know, a two for me is kind of like, I can play it, but yeah, it's certain conditions where it's gonna be better. A one is like, okay, cool, I need filler, and a zero is get get this nonsense out of my face. So I'm gonna put this at like a 2.5. I think it's solid, but it's not gonna just flat out win you the game. I don't think you have to prioritize this over, like some of the other cards we've seen. Next, we have Curious Inquiry, a one blue enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has, whenever this creature deals combat to a player, investigate. Uh, I don't think this is unplayable. I don't think this is overly exciting either, though. Um, you jam it on your flyer, you're investigating every turn, it's going to give you great value, especially at one mana. I could see this being a two, but it's going to be taking up a slot where you could be playing a creature or a removal spell, so maybe it's like a 1.5. It's between that 1 and 2 range. Can't put it at 0. I think it can be played, but it's not overly exciting. Forensic Researcher, 3 mana, 2 generic and a blue, creature merfolk detective. You can tap it, untap another target permanent you control, so you can use it for ramping. Okay. And then you can tap it, collect evidence 3, tap target creature you don't control. It's a 1/3. Collect evidence is going to be not, in my opinion, not easy to always pull off. You're not always going to have those permanents in the yard, and you are going to have to utilize those resources for one-time use. I like to untap another target permanent you control. Like I said, you could do that for ramp. So say run 3 of these, for instance. You're actually in business. You're playing whatever you want. So I can put this easily at 3. You know, the collect evidence 3, tap target creature you don't control. I think that's relevant enough for me to maybe consider 3.5, maybe. But for now, I think I'm gonna have to leave it at a 3. I'll probably run it. I'll probably run a lot of copies of this, but I think there's gonna be other things in the set that I'm just like, I would choose over this. Am I having connection issues? Let's see. Let's see if that's the case. Am I having? It don't seem like I am. Okay. No, it looks like I'm good. Forensic researcher though. Yeah. Three for me on the rating scale could be a 3.5 potentially. I gotta see how well evidence works. This is a new mechanic for me. So if evidence turns out to be really easy to pop off, this easily goes to 3.5. And if this had flying or flash, as Kyle mentioned, man, it would easily skyrocket to a 4. This is a solid card, actually. That's kind of why I stood on it for a second. Like, it was getting better and better in my mind. Next, we have Case of the Filched Falcon, a 1 blue. Case, when this case enters the battlefield, investigate. Solid. To solve, you have to control 3 or more artifacts. I don't think that's too hard to do. And solved, you can pay 3, 2 generic and a blue, sacrifice this case, put 4 1 counters on target non creature artifact. It becomes a 0/0 bird creature with flying in addition to its other types. I love this. Is this a sleeper? Is this a sleeper, or does everybody know how good this is? For and in addition to that, you could do it. I This is kind of exciting. I may want to give this a 4.5. I love this card. I like this a lot. Case of the Filch Falcon. This a 4/4 turn 3 potentially. Now you gotta solve your case to make it happen, but I give this a 4.5. And honestly, it could be it could be a 5 cuz it's just it makes a flyer, it makes artifacts, it draws you cards. It's only 1 mana. It's only 1 mana, and it's an enchantment. So it's potentially if you want to bounce it or something like that. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 for now, just off of hype alone. And if I play it and I love it, and it's something I see that I'm picking up every time, put it at a 5. It's great. It's great. Next we have Burden of Proof, 2 mana, 1 generic and a blue. Aura, enchantment, flash, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 as long as it's a detective you control. Otherwise, it has base power and toughness 1/1 and can't block detectives. Okay, so if you're able to make your little detective build pop, you know, dope, you can run this, pump it by 2, or you can run this as a kind of like a curse type deal, and make their non-detective a 1/1. Pseudo removal, I'm gonna put it at 2. Not overly excited about it. I think we're gonna see it. I think people are gonna turn your big guys that aren't detectives into 1/1s and trade in combat or beat you in combat. But I'm not always gonna be on the lookout for that. Next, we have Mistway Spy, 1 blue, Merfolk Detective, flying 1/1 with Disguise. When it's turn face up, until end of turn, whenever a creature you control deals combat to a player, investigate. 1 mana, 1/1 flyer, I think is solid. Something, 3. Well, I'd rate it at a 3. Totally playable. Um, you can play it for 3 mana to make it a 2/2. When it's turn face up, your creatures kind of get this generate clue tokens ability for dealing combat damage. I think this is fine. The mana cost is fine. Flying's fine. 1/1 isn't the greatest. It'd be great if it was 1/2. But yeah, I'd run this. Now, if the format is too strong, for instance, like, and you find out the 1/1 just isn't up to snuff, it could probably fall down to a 2. Because the 1/1 flyer is just not that strong. But if it's able to get you some draw value off of clue tokens, it could be better than a 3. We'll have to see. Next, we have Cold Case Cracker. I think that name should have gone through some testing. Cold Case Cracker. 4 mana, 3 generic, and a blue spirit detective with flying. When Cold Case Cracker dies, investigate. It's a 3/3. 4 mana 3/3 isn't terrible. You know, 4 mana 3/3 just isn't. It's not terrible. I'd rather a 4 mana 4/4, but it wouldn't be flying. So I would probably play this. I'd put it at like a 2.5. It's not something I want a bunch of, but it's something that I'm like, if I need to jam another creature, another flying evasive threat, this could probably lead me to some victories. Next, we have Unauthorized Exit. 2 mana, 1 generic and a blue. Instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Surveil 1. And that's what I'm getting at. Why the heck? Why the heck would I want to play? What's it called up here? Let me go back to it. Geez, so long ago. Where was it? Sudden Setback. Why would I want to run Sudden Setback for 4 when there's Unauthorized Exit for 2? And I get to surveil 1. So yeah, I think this is like a 2.5 still. I still prefer my exile or destroy type spells, but this is solid. I can see people running it. I think we're going to see a lot of unauthorized exits occurring. Next, we have Reasonable Doubt. 2 mana, 1 generic, and a blue. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. Suspect up to 1 target creature. Can you counter the disguise creatures? If you can counter the disguise creatures, I definitely put this at 2.5. And that's simply because I don't like counter spells that much in limited. That's the only thing. I'm not a big fan. But if you like, they want to disguise their creature and you can counter it with this. This is probably at least a 3 or higher. This is pretty strong. We'll have to just see how that works. And you can suspect up to 1 target creature with it. So you can give one of your creatures menace or make it so one of their creatures can't block. This is actually kind of scary. I'm going to put this at a 3. You know, I think people will run 4 of these and be totally happy. Like, boom, countered, countered, countered. And I can make either my creature menace or make your creature not able to block. Both of which is great for me as far as an attacking scenario. This may be way better than what I'm giving it. I'm giving it at least 3, and it could grow higher. Reasonable Doubt is solid. Next, we have Dramatic Accusation. 3 mana, 2 generic, and a blue. Aura, enchant creature. When Dramatic Accusation enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. You can pay 2 blue, shuffle enchanted creature into its owner's library. Kind of like that. It's not exile. It's overcosted, especially for blue. Well, it's overcosted in general, but it's almost like exile. You taking it out of combat, and then when you get the mana, you can just shuffle it back into their library. They get they get to play it again. I don't know how I feel about this. I kind of feel like it's a 3. I feel like you tap them down. It's not my favorite way to deal with creatures, but for 3 mana, it's not too bad. I'm between a 2.5 and a 3 on Dramatic Accusation. I'll have to just see how it plays out. Next, we have Faithlight. 2 mana, 1 generic and a blue. Flash Aura. Enchant creature. When Faithlight enters the battlefield, enchanted creature gains hexproof until end of turn. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has flying. Okay. I'm gonna instantly just give this like a 2 to a 2.5 because it's not gonna win you the game necessarily, but it's a great support spell. Fizzles out their removal and give you some evasion as well. I think that's solid. Next we have Bubble Smuggler, 2 mana, 1 generic and a blue. Creature Octopus Fish. You can run it out with Disguise, and when it's turn face up, put 4/1/1 counters on it. 2 mana, 2/1 that you can disguise 6 or take off the disguise. I don't know how we're going to say this, but you flip it over, it gets 4/1/1 counters. Not bad. But for 6 mana, that's tough. So you can play this on turn 2 as a 2/1. You can play it on turn 3 as a 2/2 with Ward that you have to wait till turn 6 to flip over to be a 6/5 on turn 6. Maybe that's good. In most instances, I see myself just having a 2/1 that gets beat out by a 1/1. I don't know if I'm gonna like that, but we'll see. I don't think it's a bad card. I'm gonna give it a 2 to like 2.75. And if it's any good, I'd bump it up to 3. But right now, it's not impressing me. 6 mana is way too much. Exit Specialist, 2 mana, 1 generic and a blue. Creature, Human Detective. Exit Specialist can't be blocked by a creature with power 3 or greater. Kind of reminiscent of the card in white, where creatures with power 2 or less can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. It has Disguise for 2. When Exit Specialist is turn face up, return another target creature to its owner's hand. 2/1. This is solid. What you mean? It's a 2 mana 2/1, right? That can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. Cool, love that. And it can turn up and bounce a creature. I'm gonna put this at a 3. I would run multiple copies of this card because it's pseudo unblockable almost for free. And it can bounce spells. So at 5 mana, you can start playing this and boom, bouncing their things and potentially getting some damage in there. I like that a lot. And it's a detective. Next, we have Behind the Mask, 1 blue instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may collect evidence 6. Until end of turn, target artifact or creature becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness for 3. If evidence was collected, it has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn instead. Another like combat trick to give you some value, you can make a 4/3, or you can make their creature weaker by collecting evidence. Collecting evidence is not proving or showing me to be like really good. To me, it's a little overcosted so far, and the value really just isn't there. Granted, you can turn the creature to a 1/1. This is only until end of turn. It's not even permanent. So I don't know how much I like this. I don't think it's unplayable. I think it's actually really good. Um, you can turn one of your clues into a 4/3 all of a sudden. That is gonna freaking hurt. Um, and once again, you can potentially turn their big guy into a 1/1 guy by collecting the evidence. So I think this is a decent card. I'm gonna put it at like a 2.5. I just had to interject that I'm not a big fan so far of the collect evidence mechanic. Project Inspector, 3 mana, 2 generic and a blue. Human Detective. When Projector Inspector or another detective enters the battlefield under your control, and whenever a detective you control is turned face up, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. 3 mana, 3/2. Lets you rummage. Solid. I'd give it a 2.5. It's not overly great. It doesn't have any kind of evasion. No flying, no menace. We have ways to give things menace, but it just gives you kind of like that rummage ability. Um, that can help you find the things you need early game or even late game. Jaded Analyst. It looks like that one actor. Could not think of his name. When I do, I'm gonna make a meme. Two generic and well, two generic. Wait, 2 mana, 1 generic and a blue. Human Detective Defender. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, Jaded Analyst loses Defender and gains Vigilance until end of turn. 2 mana, 3/2 Defender. It's solid, but I want things that's kind of like I don't have to trigger to make it able to attack. And on top of that, this doesn't have any kind of evasion. I'll give it a 2. I think I'm going to see it a lot, but I don't think it's something I'm going to want to play too heavy, except in the right deck. Crime Stopper Sprite, 3 mana, 2 generic and a blue, Fairy Detective. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may collect evidence 6. Has flying. Whenever it ETBs, tap target creature. If evidence was collected, put a stun counter on it. It's a 2/2. Once again, I'm just not too big a fan of the collect evidence cost. So I have to exile mana cost 6 or more from my graveyard to be able to tap a creature for a turn. Like 3 mana, 2/2 flyer, I'll rate this at a 3. The collect evidence ability, I will bump it up to like a 3.25. I don't know how relevant it's going to be. I just don't know. I feel like in a lot of instances on turn 3, this is going to come down and not stun anything. And I think that's where you're going to get your value out of a card like Crime Stopper Sprite, is to tap them down for a turn and leave them tapped. So I'm going to put it at a 3.25. I think it's better than your average 3 mana 2/2 flyer, but only by a slight amount. Next we have Hotshot Investigators. It's 6 mana. Veldalkin Detective. When Hotshot Investigator enters the battlefield, return up to one other target creature to its owner's hand. If you controlled it, investigate. 6 mana 4/4. That bounces. I'm gonna put this at a 1. This is so overcosted. A 5 would have brought it up to a 2. A 4 probably would have brought it up to a 2.5. A 3 would have definitely brought it up to like a 3.5. That's how important mana cost is. This is just too expensive. It's playable if you need to play something. It's not unplayable. But geez, what are they doing? Next we have Out Cold, 4 mana, 3 generic, and a blue. Instant, the spell can't be countered. Includes the ward ability. Tap up to 2 target creatures and put a stun counter on each of them and investigate. This is way better than that bounce spell, the rare one or whatnot, that puts a card on top or the bottom of the owner's library. Can't be countered, so you can target their ward creatures. Tap up to 2 target creatures, put a stun counter on them, and investigate. I'm putting it at a 3, even though it's a 4 mana interactive spell where you really want to be blowing up things. The fact that you can investigate and target the ward creatures, I think is just really solid. I'd run 2, maybe 3 of these cards because it's drawing me cards. I'd have to see what kind of builds I want, but I give it a 3 off rip. Next we have Deduce, 2 mana, 1 generic and a blue. Instant, draw a card and investigate. Solid. I'll give it a 2, 2.5. Not the card you want to just be picking over everything else, but it's playable and it's definitely better than a 1. So you get a couple of these, draw a card and investigate, so it's basically 2 mana, draw 2. And it generates you an artifact which may be relevant in a lot of instances. Then we have Benthic Criminologist, 5 mana, Merfolk Wizard. Whenever Benthic Criminologist enters the battlefield or attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact. If you do, draw a card. 5 mana, 4/5. I'm going to put this at a 2. Yeah. I mean, I think you can run it. Yeah. It's probably like a 1.5. 5 mana, 4/5 just isn't anything to write home about. It doesn't draw you a card in every situation. This is probably just a 1, actually. Okay. So that wraps up the blue spells for this set. Overall, I definitely got to rank white over blue. Blue has some things in it, some interactive things, but there wasn't. I think the prime creature I saw that I really liked was that hexproof guy. Like that was just like one creature I was excited about. No, 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 no. Can't forget about. Uh oh, where was it? The 1 mana case. Here it is. Case of Filch Falcon. I think for me this is the biggest sleeper. Like the other sleeper in white was that 2 mana whenever a creature 2 with power 2 or less comes to the battlefield, it gets flying. I think that's probably one of the sleepers for white. I think this is a sleeper for blue. I'll run as many of these as I can. I think this is a great card, Case of the Filch Falcon. But other than that, blue seemed very underpowered to me in comparison. Um, had that one tap down spell. Sudden Setback is very disappointing, especially to be in the uncommon slot. Candlestick, kind of disappointing. Cryptic Coat was interesting. I think I'd really want to see what this can do, especially in the set that has a lot of disguise going on. So yeah, that wasn't too bad. Let me take a quick break and then I will follow up to see if I'm going to go on and continue into black. I'll be right back. All right, all right, all right. So yeah, I decided to go on and continue. So let me give the spiel. Ayo, hello, Fantastics. It's Mr. Clintastik, and I am back with my black set review for murders at Karlov Manor. I just botched that whole little thing, but it's okay. It is okay. We are here. So I've gone over white and I've gone over blue. White to me has the most consistency. Blue has more like that. They just got some very interesting cars that I gotta see in action to really know how good they are. So now we're moving on to black. Let's see what's going on. First up, we got Massacre Girl, known killer. Love the name. Name alone, Massacre Girl, known killer is one of the sweetest names that I've read out so far. 4 mana, 2 generic, 2 black, legendary creature, human, assassin. All the right things. Has menace. Alright. Creatures you control have wither. They deal damage to creatures in the form of negative 1/1 counters. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, if its toughness was less than 1, draw a card. Okay. 4 mana 4/4 with menace is already chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. Creatures you control have wither, makes your other creatures just that much more potent, and gives you the potential to draw cards. I'm giving this a 4 to maybe 4.5. I would probably pick this again and again and again if I. It's legendary, so you're not gonna see not legendary mythic. I've been playing too much Diablo. It's mythic, but I mean you're not gonna see it often, but I definitely play it pretty much every time I see it. Every time. Like, come on now, they're really tripping. So they give us Delaney and Aurelia for white, and they start us off with Massacre Girl for black, but they give us Conspiracy Unraveler for blue. Granted, this is gonna be great in limited. I mean, in constructed, I believe. Like, you can cheat this out or something. Actually, there's no guarantee on that. They just slept on blue. The first 2 cards in blue was Boo Boo in comparison to Massacre Girl Known Killer. Yeah, I love this card. It might just be a auto pick every time. Next we have Vein Ripper, 6 mana, 3 generic, 3 black, vampire assassin with flying and ward sacrifice a creature. Whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. It's a 6/5. Now I don't necessarily like 6 mana 6 mana creatures at all, but it's a 6 mana 6/5 with flying and ward. And when a creature dies, opponent loses 2 life, you gain 2 life. That could turn the tides of a game. That could turn the tides of a game. Still, 6 mana is really, really, really expensive. I can't like with good faith say this is just a slam dunk each and every draft. Even though it looks like it. It looks like a card where you're just, oh, 6 mana 6/5 flyer, boom. Then you never get to play it. It's like, oh, I was just one turn away from playing the Vein Ripper, and that was gonna change everything. So, me, I'm gonna have to be a little disrespectful to everything going on with this card. I think it's a great card. 6 mana is really tough, especially in limited. I gotta put it like a 2.5. 2 to 2.5. I can't put it at 3 because there's gonna be other even common cards that I'm gonna choose over this in a lot of situations. Next, we have Outrageous Robbery. X mana, 2 black, instant. Target opponent exiles top X cards of their library face down. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast it. This is so disrespectful. This is so disrespectful. So, uh-oh. I'm like, it's already tough to like steal somebody's stuff. It's like, oh man, you stole my thing. That's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to make them discard from their hand or exile amount of threats you have in your deck. But also, I'm starting to gain those too. So not only are you running out of resources, I'm obtaining those resources to play against you. And if this includes lands too, maybe I'm getting overhyped here. That could be what's going on. Maybe I'm getting overhyped. Because this isn't something like, oh, it's just winning you the game. But it's really exciting. Now, I'm going to put it at a 2.5. And I know I just put this card at a 2.5 because I think it's playable. I think these are great cards. I just don't know the situations because it's like, oh, I exiled the top cards of your library. Great. Oh, you're swinging at me with your big 10/10 flying hexproof boy? Dang it. I missed out. So it's not just a slam dunk on outrageous robbery, but I'm really excited to try it out. I'll give it a 2 to a 2.5. Next, we have Deadly Cover Up, 5 mana, 3 generic, 2 black. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may collect evidence 6. The May ability is what's making collect evidence even interesting because I think in most cases you're not able to pull it off. You destroy all creatures. If evidence was collected, exile a card from an opponent's graveyard. Then search its owner's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile. That player shuffles, draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. I think I just run this as a 5 mana destroy all creature type situation. Which we're going to have to be on the lookout for in this set. Because white has a board wipe and black has a board wipe. So white has one at 4 mana, black has one at 5 mana. So be careful running all your creatures out there during this season because you might just get jacked up. And I think they're both rare. They're not even mythic or anything, so people are gonna have them. They're gonna be out. I'll put this at a. I hate to just say 2.5. My thing about board wipes, I'm just not good at playing them in limited. That is the thing. You're gonna hear me say that during my reviews about certain types of cards that I'm simply not good at playing. I'll try them, I'll test them out, and I'm just like, eh. It's like, well, I have the board wipe, but I have all the good creatures. And then it's like, oh, well, the tide's the turn. Now I need to run out my board wipe. I wipe the board, and now they are dominating me. So it's one of those situations where I don't necessarily do it right, but the opponents do. So I kind of give props to that. It's not necessarily going to win you the game by itself either. So I think I'm gonna put it at a 2, Deadly Cover Up, and I think Outrageous Robbery is gonna sit at a 2, even though it's really good. And I think I'm gonna keep Vein Ripper at like a 2.5. This, like, if you can ramp into this is solid. I just don't know how often I'm gonna actually be afraid of Vein Ripper because by the time they get to play a 6 mana card, I'm gonna blow it up. In most cases. Yeah, yeah. Board wipes can be an interesting way to play, but at the same time you got to be on the lookout for them. So I'm gonna give respect to it. I think it's totally playable. It's definitely better than a rating of 1, but I don't think it's like a 3 where I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna pick all the board wipes. Like, yeah, that could be a strat though. Who knows? Anyways, we have Case of the Stash Skeleton. 2 mana, 1 generic, and a black. When this case enters the battlefield, create a 2/1 black skeleton creature token and suspect it. To solve, you control no suspected skeletons. What? But the first thing says I have to suspect it, okay? And to solve it, wait. Once it's solved, you pay 2, sacrifice this case, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, shuffle. So this is just a 2 mana 2/1 skeleton with menace and can't block. That's not terrible, 2 mana like, but this is so much text to say what I just said. And I know it has extra abilities. This we're focusing on limited. Have we even discussed the skeleton at all? No. I don't know if we're gonna have enough skeletons to support this. We need something to take Menace away to ever get the ability to solve the case. And even solving the case isn't that great. I'm gonna put this at a two. Black has some interesting cards, like, and it started off great. Massacre Girl, like I said, 4.5 to a 5, no doubt. Great card. Vein Ripper, that's when we started being like, exciting cards. Just are they winning you the game? Are they winning you the game? That's what limited is about, winning the game. So a 2-1 menace card in black, I mean, I think it's okay. Honestly, I think it's totally like you can run as many of these as you want. Um, I, and it's easy to play. I kind of want to say 2 point. I would love to give it a three, simply because it's a 2-1 with menace. What is going on with the internet? Like I'm having major drops in frames. This isn't too common. Like what's happening here? Let me close out some of these other windows and whatnot. Cause yeah, I'm dropping mad frames for no reason. Before I go to the next color, if I do decide to do red tonight, I'm just gonna reset my rig and you know probably do a little troubleshooting just to make sure everything is up to par. But yeah, I understand what my boy. Once it dies, you get to tutor up a card in your library. I'll give it out of respect. I'll give it a three. I think because I think the 2-1 menace is actually really good. I do. Um, I just felt like the convoluted aspect of all of this extra text wasn't that great. But in the context of being manageable, I'll give it a three. Let's see. What is happening with the connection? Okay, I'm gonna try to power through it and then yeah, do the troubleshooting. Anyways, Hunted Bone Brute, 3 mana, 2 generic and a black skeleton beast with menace. When it ETBs, target opponent creates two 1/1 white dog creature tokens. When it dies, each opponent loses 3 life. Has disguise 2 and it's a 6/2. A 3 mana 6/2 with menace is excellent. The fact that it gives your opponents 2 white, like, they're killing me. They're killing me with these spells. It's like, oh man, this is great until I gotta give the opponents. I don't want to give the opponent anything. I don't give it. No, god dang it. I don't want to give my opponent nothing. I don't want to give them the opportunity to choose from my piles. I don't want to give them two 1/1 white dogs. I don't want to give them anything at all. I don't want to give them the chance to draw cards. I don't want to give them the chance to gain life. Nothing. Nothing. And so when I have to, I'm upset. I'm upset. This card just lost so much value to me. I'm putting it at a two. I'm putting it at a two because I mean all you got to do is remove one of the white dogs I know, but based off of how I like to play, Hunted Bone Brute is just a slap to the face. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play this excellent creature here. Like, oh man, I love this. And here you go, two dogs. Oh, Well, thank you. And no, now they have sacrifice fodder. They have blockers. They no. I put it at a two. Next we have barbed servitor, 4 mana, artifact construct with indestructible. That's another key. Like so, we got hexproof in the set, which is a keyword we haven't seen for a minute, and we have indestructible on the creature. When the ETB is suspected, so it's indestructible menace that can't block. When it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose a life. So, mm, when it is dealt damage, target opponent loses that much life. I like this. I like this. ETB suspected, so it gets menace. You'll want to buff it up and enhance it. To but you slam this on turn four and you start just drawing card every turn. And say you get to play Barb Servitor and Massacre Girl. Oh my god. Oh my god. Because it's going to be dealing damage in the form of Wither and just start chipping them down. And then you pump this up in any kind of way. Oh, I'm going to give this a 3 simply off mana cost. Off of mana cost. It may be a 3.5. I don't think it's as good as Massacre Girl off Rip, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Because this card, it can't block. That's another thing. But you can take Suspect away from it. I'm going to give it a 3.5. I think it's way better than your average card. But I got to see it at work. And if it works, I think it'll go up to a 4. Otherwise, I think it might just be me overhyping it. Next, we have Homicide Investigator, 2 mana, 1 generic and a black creature, human detective. Whenever one or more non token creatures you control die, investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. It's a 2/2. Eh. At the rare slot, too, like this. Come on, man. Pay some respect to the rankings. This is like an uncommon card to me. I'm going to give it. It's a 2 mana 2/2, so it's a bear. And then if something else dies, you investigate. I don't even know if this is better than your average card. This just dies, like it don't attack well. I'm gonna give it a 2. This is crazy. Like for these cards to be rare, they shouldn't be sitting at such low rankings, in my personal opinion. Not a card that I'm like, oh, I think it's not even average. It's more like if it needs support, in my opinion, it's not average. I think that's a big thing for me. If this card, that's why 3 mana 2/2 flyer is average to me because in a lot of cases it's gonna be flying over the board and it can push through some damage. Cards that I don't know, kind of spin the wheels or you need some help with, I can't classify that as average. I gotta support the card. It needs help. It's crippled. So, and that's what I think about this homicide investigator. It's crippled. I'm gonna put it at a 2. Next, we have Illicit Masquerade, 4 mana, 3 generic, and a black enchantment with flash. ETBs put an imposter counter on each creature you control. Whenever a creature you control with an imposter counter dies, exile it. Return up to one other target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. 4 mana, okay. Am I reading this wrong? Whenever a creature you control with an imposter counter on it dies, exile it. So my creatures don't go to the yard no more. They just get exiled. Then return up to one other target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. For 4 at Flash, I think this is really good. I can't put it at the average card because it needs support. I can't even put it at 3 though because it needs support. It needs something good in the yard to really matter. I gotta put it at 2, which is insane for rare cards to not even be Like the greatest. Like these should be like slam dunks. Lord. Leering Onlooker. 2 mana, 1 generic, and a black. Vampire with flying. You can pay 4, 2 generic, and 2 black. Exile Leering Onlooker from your graveyard. Create two 1/1 black bat creature tokens with flying. It's a 1/3. Okay. I like it. I mean, it'd be even more exciting at like a 2/3 or 2/2, something like that. 1/3 is not bad. It's going to block well for you. It can attack, not strongly though. And it can come back from the yard. I think that can be relevant. Um, I'm going to give it like a 2.5. I give it a 3 actually. I mean, if I run a bunch of these, I'm not going to be too upset. If I have 4 copies of these and every turn I slam one down on turn 2, I got a great defense. Later on, I still have a good offense by exiling from the yard. I'll give this a 3. I think this is pretty solid, which is crazy after seeing all these rares that really didn't cut the cheese. All right, next we have lead pipe. I love the flavor of that. 1 black, artifact, clue, equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. When an equipped creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. You can pay 2, sacrifice to draw a card, equip 2. I'm gonna put this at a 1. This, granted, it gives you the +2/0 and draws you a card later. It's just not that exciting. It's way less exciting than this surveilling, and it's less exciting than tapping your opponent's creatures. It's the least exciting clue equipment that I've seen. So I gotta give it like, I mean, so say you slam it on your bat, for instance, it's like, oh, or you're on your vampire. So instead of it swinging in for 1, you're swinging in for 3 all of a sudden. So there's some value there. Maybe it's a 1.5, but by itself it does nothing. And if it does nothing by itself, I don't think this is unplayable at 0, but it's definitely not up there as something I'm like too excited to play. So I'm gonna put it at 1. Y'all are kind of on my journey of developing my new and improved ranking system. I probably should have had all this prepared before I got started, but hey, it's life. Next, we have Soul Innervation, 4 mana, 3 generic, and a black enchantment with flash. When Soul Innervation enters the battlefield, target creature gets -4 until end of turn. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. 4 mana, -4, -4. Come on now. When there's 2 mana, just straight up destroy creatures. This is along the lines of the 4 mana just put on top of the bottom of the owner's library. Why is this so expensive? Granted, I do like that it's on an enchantment, so if I happen to be able to bounce it, I could get recursive value. But I would only really want that recursive value if this was basically destroy target creature. ETB 4/4, destroy target creature, because that's common. That's a common ability at 4 mana. And whenever one or more creatures, like, you can leave the ability on there and it's still good. A 4 mana -4/4. That's not even average to me. That's not even average to me. There's gonna be other threats that are way bigger than 4 at 4, and you're gonna be looking hurt. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm gonna put this at 2.5, and if there's a lack of removal altogether in the format, I'll move it up to a 3. But if there's just better removal overall than this, like this right there with the sudden setback, I don't know. 4 mana -4, and only till the end of turn. It's an enchantment that only does it till end of turn. They should have been permanent. Like, anyway, I'm gonna give it a 2.5 simply because I don't know if I like it too much. Next we have, let's see if I can read the name. Presumed Dead. 2 mana, 1 generic, and a black. Until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains when this creature dies. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control and suspect it. A 2. I think this is playable, but it's not always what I want to be doing. I want some really, really good ETBs if I'm running something like Presumed Dead. Maybe some first strike creatures. Um, yeah, for the most part, I want some really good ETB creatures. So I feel like that's a lot of support that's needed. Don't know how often I want to run Presumed Dead. Next, we have Slimy Dual Leech, 4 mana, 3 generic and a black. Leech. It's ugly. That is ugly. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control with power 2 or less gets +1, +0, and gains Death Touch until end of turn. It's a 2/4. So it can turn itself into a 3/4 Death Toucher, or turn another creature into, a +1/0 Death Toucher. I'm gonna give it a 2. Black is looking very mid. Very, very mid. Next we have Fester Leech. Black. Whenever Fester Leech deals combat damage to a player, you mill 2 cards. In addition to not liking to give my opponents anything, I don't like to remove my own resources either. And I think that's why Collect Evidence isn't something I'm too excited about. I don't want to exile from my graveyard to access these abilities that I don't care too much about, or that's overcosted at that rate. This is the same. 1 mana makes me mill myself. I don't want to. I simply don't want to. Pay 2, 1 generic and a black. It gets 2/2 until end of turn. Activate only once. So on turn 2, this could be a 3/3. So I get it. You kind of gotta pay the price to get this ability. I just don't want to. 1 mana, 1/1 that I have to pump into to 2/2 and it mills myself for 2. I'll put it at 2.5. Honestly, I think it's way better than that. I think it's probably a 3. Simply based off the fact that it can be a 2/2 off turn on turn 2. But at the same time, say you play one on turn 1. Turn 2, you can't play another one because you won't be able to pump on that turn. Then your math gets thrown off. So this to me is like a 2.5. Maybe even, I'm going to sit it at a 2. I don't like this card. I don't like it. I don't think it's that great. I'm going to put it at 2. Next, we have Polygraph Orb, 5 mana for generic and a black artifact. When it ETBs, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. You lose 2 life. Pay 2, tap, collect evidence 3. Each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card or sacrifice a creature. I'm putting this at 1. Yeah, I'm putting it at 1. If I probably would have put it at 2 if it was 4 mana, but at 5 mana, that's too overcosted. It makes me lose 2 life. Then I have to. The ability is okay. If they can't discard or sacrifice a creature, you know, they lose 3 life. But you had to collect evidence 3. I think this is too slow. I think this is overall too slow. I'll give it. I mean, it's recursive. I'll give it a 2. I'll give it a 2. It might be enough to get behind the line. You do this twice, that's 6 life. You do it 3 times, that's half their life. I just don't like the fact that you have to lose 2 life. So I'll give it a 2. I'm probably willing to see what it's about at some point. Clandestine Meddler, 3 mana, 2 generic and a black. Vampire Rogue. When an ETB, suspect up to 1 other target creature you control. So it gives a creature menace. Whenever 1 or more suspected creatures you control attack, surveil 1. I'll put this at 3. It can make another creature menace. I think that's dope. I don't necessarily like the fact that you won't be able to block appropriately. You'll have to keep that in mind as you suspect your own creatures. But say you run, 3 of these and you play one, doesn't really do much. But you play a second one, suspect the first one. Now it's a 3/2 menace, and you play it again, do the same. So I think overall, this card can help you win the game a little easier than some of the other cards we've seen. But it's not a slam dunk. But even the extra ability, whenever 1 or more suspected creatures you control attack, you surveil 1. I think that's okay. I'm gonna put it at 3, maybe 3.25. I think this is actually a little bit better than your average card, but that's to be determined. Next, we have Persuasive Interrogators, 6 mana. Do not like that. When the ETBs investigate, whenever you sack a clue, put target opponent gets 2 poison counters. It's a 5/6. So you need. So the math on this. This is a 6 mana spell. It's a 5/6. So you gotta pay 6 mana. Then to get the poison counters, you gotta sink another 10 mana and 5 permanents into this card. It's flavorful. I think it's cool. Six. It's a one. I don't think it's totally unplayable, but I don't know if you're really gonna ever get the point. You really want to be dedicated to making that poison thing go off. And the 6 mana 5/6 just isn't that cool. It's not cool at all. So I'm gonna put it at one. I think a big brain player is gonna come in and be like, "Yeah, I'm doing that in limited." Like that's something. If y'all want to see me try that in limited, I'd do it. And I'll try to run all the ramp I could, and then run something like this and try to sack him off. But that's the only way I see this card ever being like cared about. Next we have Undercity Eliminator, 5 mana, 3 generic, 2 black. Gorgon Assassin. When it ETBs, you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. When you do, exile target creature an opponent controls. I'd run a playset of these. I'd run a playset of them. You tell me by the time I get to 5 mana, I'm slamming down a creature, and of I'll generate what I need. Because these stack on themselves. You could play this, sack a creature, exile one of their things, and then play into this and do it again. I like this a lot. The 5 mana is kind of boo boo. And if you're running too many of these, you're going to get hung up. I do like the exile ability. I think it's a great removal spell. I gotta sit it at 2.75 because of the mana cost. Because of the mana cost. If this was 4 mana, this would be a slam dunk. But it's a little bit worse than your average removal spell. It's a little bit worse than that. So I gotta put probably a 2.5. Can't even give it the 2.7. I gotta give it the 2.5. Case of the Gorgon's Kiss. It's 1 black. When this case enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target creature that was dealt damage this turn. Okay. To solve, 3 or more creatures were put in the graveyard for anywhere this turn. Solve, this case is a 4/4 Gorgon with Death Touch and Lifelink in addition to its other types. This is something you want to pair with your board wipes. You know, if you're trying to go for that board wipe type situation, boom, you swing in with one of your weak creatures, they block, you blow up something, or you just board wipe and leave behind a 4/4 Gorgon with Death Touch and Lifelink. The first part of the case, I don't know how often that happens. To solve it, I don't know how easy that'll be. I don't know if this is your. I don't think this is necessarily your average card. I think this takes a lot of support. I'm gonna put it at 2. I think it has a high ceiling, but it needs a lot of support. Next we have Long Goodbye, 2 mana, 1 generic and a black. Instant. This spell can't be countered. Destroy a target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. So all the disguised creatures for 2 mana are gone. All of them. This is way better than that 5 mana. Was it 4 mana enchantment that we saw? 4 mana enchantment, neg 4, neg 4. Get that out of my face. 2 mana instant that's gonna take care of a lot of creatures. It's not gonna take care of every creature. It's not, but it's only 2 mana. That 4 mana enchantment's not gonna take care of every creature. And the issue is, it's not gonna take care of every creature, but it's 4 freaking mana. At 4 mana, I need you taking care of every creature. At 2 mana, you can have some conditions. So yeah, and it can't be countered. 3.5. I'll run four of these. I'll run every copy out. Boom, boom. Just give me that. I'll eat them up because it bypasses that ward ability. Solid card. You're gonna want to run your long goodbyes. Next we have it doesn't add up. 5 mana, 3 generic, 2 black. Instant. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield suspected. I'm gonna give this a two. It needs support. You gotta have something good in your yard. Otherwise, turns 1 through 5, you're looking kind of goofy. Night Drinker Mori, 4 mana, 3 generic and a black. Vampire, flying, ETBs. You lose 3 life. 4 mana, 4/2 flyer. That makes me lose 3 life. I'm gonna put it at a two. I'm just riddling off these twos like crazy. I don't like the fact that I have to lose 3 life. So there's gonna be positions in the game where I might not ever even be able to play this because of my life situation. I don't like that. This to me is almost unplayable. Almost. You can play it out for three and then disguise for two. So that's something. Well, so will you bypass the lose 3 life if you basically morph this to the board then flip it? If you can bypass that lose 3 life, I think it's definitely a solid two. If you can't, I still kind of think it's a two, but it might fall to a one in a lot of cases. Next, we have Cerebral Confiscation, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a black. Sorcery, choose one. Target opponent discards 2 cards. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. I'm gonna put it at a one. I mean, 3 mana. There's cards at 1 mana that can let you look into the opponent's hand and make them discard a particular like card. So at three, it's playable, but it's almost to the point of unplayability when you know there's abilities that are way cheaper than that, even at 2 mana. Next, we have Unscrupulous Agent, 2 mana, 1 generic and a black. Elf Detective. When it ETBs, exile. No. When it ETBs, target opponent exiles a card from their hand. 1/1. See, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, I just talked about how this just isn't that great in comparison. Like, a 2 mana 1/1. I'll run both. This is 3 mana. I'll rate this at a three. I'd play a playset of these. Just run them. Oh, oh, because they're gonna be getting rid of lands, support spells, then creatures. This is solid. It's gonna block for you and kind of control what they can do with the spells. It's gonna extinguish their resources to a degree. Way better than Cerebral Confiscation. I'll put it at like a three. I think this is a very average card, especially after the last set. Or what set was I playing recently? Where I used a lot. It wasn't Eldraine, I don't think. I can't recall, but there was a set recently I was playing, and I mean the discard abilities was just excellent, just excellent. Murder, 3 mana, destroy target creature, slam dunk. We'll put it at a four. Destroy target, just boom, destroy target creature, four, instant. Boof. Give it to me, easy. Probably a 4.5. It destroys anything, any creature. Slice from the shadows. X mana and a black instant. This spell can't be countered. Target creature gets neg X until end of turn. Pfft. Okay, so a four. Like, these don't win the games by themselves, but they're so freaking good. They deal with so many threats. They're not just the average card. You're gonna definitely want to run your murders and your slice from the shadows. And slice from the shadows is probably actually a 4.5 simply off the merit it scales. You can use it early game, you can use it late game, and it goes right through ward. Perfect. I'm giving this a 4.5, and I'm gonna leave murder right there at the 4 range. I think this is a little bit better, but I could be wrong. I think they could be interchangeable. Next we have Toxin Analyst. No, Toxin Analysis. 1 black, instant, target creature gains death touch and lifelink until end of turn, and investigate. Okay, I'll put this at a two. It takes support, it needs things. You're always going to typically have a creature, though. Lifelink and Death Touch, that could turn a whole game around. So this could be like a 2.5. Once again, it needs support, and you investigate off of it. I'm going to give this a 2.5. This is going to help you get rid of problem threats. This is going to help you stay in the game. This is going to replace itself by investigating and generate a permanent artifact. I'm giving it a 2.5. If this was any kind of creature, it would definitely be it would definitely be a 3. Gnarling Gorehound, black, menace dog. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you surveil, and it's a 1/1, a 1 mana 1/1. It's almost like a 1 mana 1/1 menace is almost like a 1 mana 1/1 flyer. It's not going to deal a lot of damage, but it's something to play early game, something that's really evasive early. It can kind of help you pressure immediately. Also, whenever you play your cheap creatures, you get to surveil. So I think this is actually a key piece, and it's like really easy to play. You run 3, 4 of these, yeah. You run some of the pump spells too, that bring creatures back from the yard, different things like that. I'm gonna put this at a 3. I actually really like this. I almost like it more than I like the 1/1 flyer. Almost. We'll have to see. So I'm gonna give this a 3. See how it plays out. It's crazy that the common cards are more average than the rare and mythics. Anyway, next we have Basilica Stalker, 6 mana, Vampire Detective, flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, you gain 1 life and surveil 1. It can come down as a disguised creature, and it's a 3/4. So it's a 6 mana 3/4 flyer that you can play out at 3, flip for 5. I just It's a 2. Um, I think people may play this card actually. This might get to the average state because you can play it out disguised. This might be a 3. The fact that you can flip it at 5 as a 3/4, 5 mana 3/4 flyer still isn't that good. It's not even a 5 mana 3/4 flyer. It's really like 8 because you had to pay 3 to do it initially and then pay another 5. I got to keep this at 2. I think I'm going to see a couple people play it, but I don't know if it's going to be the impact that people may think it's going to be. Next, we have Rot Farm Mortipede. That's 4 mana, 3 generic, and a black. Creature insect. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, Rot Farm Mortipede gains +1/+0 and gains menace and lifelink until end of turn. 4 mana 3/4. I'm leaving it at a 2. Leaving it at a 2. The fact that it can get lifelink is great, but you have to support that. I don't want to support a 4 mana 3/4 on the ground at all. Not really. Especially, this pairs with the collect evidence, and I'm not even liking collect evidence, so it's definitely not something I want to do personally. Next, we have Alley Assailant, 3 mana, 2 generic, and a black creature, vampire, rogue. Alley Assailant enters the battlefield tapped. It has disguise 6, and when its turn face up, opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. It's a 3/3. So it's a 3 mana 3/3 that comes in tapped, unfortunately. But say you can play it as a 3 mana 2/2 with ward, and if you flip it, you might win the game. But it's gonna do some things for you. I'll put this as average. I'll give it a 3. I'll run a few copies of these actually. I'm 3 mana 3/3. All it's missing is menace, honestly. So it's probably like a 2.5 because you may not get that disguise off too often. I'll give this a 2.5, but a 3 mana 3/3 isn't bad. And the only reason I'm really giving it 2.5 is because it comes in tapped and doesn't have something like menace associated with it. Both of those conditions. Having one of those conditions would have put it at a 3. Having both of those conditions would have had it higher. Oh, what did I do? So far, black isn't overly exciting. The only cards I'm so far excited about really is Massacre Girl and the removal spells that bypass Ward. Next, we have Agency Coroner, 5 mana, 4 generic and a black. Ogre Cleric, pay 2 and a black, sacrifice another creature, draw a card. If the sacrificed creature has suspected, draw 2 cards instead. It's a 3/6. So a 5 mana 3/6 where you have to sacrifice creatures to get abilities. I'm putting it at a 1. Black, what are you doing? There's such a variance between the good cards in black and the uh cards. And there's not much middle ground. I don't know how often I've even said cards are average. It's either really good or like not that great. Next we have Repeat Offender, 2 mana, 1 generic and a black, Human Assassin. You can pay 2 and a black. If Repeat Offender is suspected, put a 1/1 counter on it. Otherwise, suspected, it's a 2/1. This is freaking great! What are you talking about? A 2 mana 2/1 that can the next turn basically be a 3/2 with menace on turn 3, which is still great, that can continue to put counters on itself. It's a mana sink that's actually beneficial. I'll give this average, especially at 2 mana, because you can run a few of them, use them as chumps or whatnot, and then mid to late game they become bombs. So they're average early and bombs late. Might even be higher than a 3, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Next we have Macabre Reconstruction, 4 mana, 3 generic, and a black. Sorcery. This spell costs 2 less to cast if a creature card was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. I like cards that give me 2 for 1s. So I'm gonna give this like a 2. Um, because it's not gonna necessarily help you win the game. It could bump up to a 2.5, but honestly, no. 4 mana. If it's 4 mana to play this, it's definitely a 2. If it's 2 mana to play this, it can go up to a 2.5. But off top, it is 4 mana to play it, and I gotta leave it as a 2 and assume that's what you're playing it as. But it's a nice card that's gonna support a lot of strategies. Extract a Confession, 2 mana, 1 generic, and a black. Sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may collect evidence 6. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If evidence was collected, instead each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. This is probably one of the better collect evidences. Now it's collect evidence 6, which is kind of okay because you're going to want to blow up their really strong things later in the game anyways. Early, it still works as sacrifices. I'm going to put this as 3. It could go to a 3.5 because it still gets around that ward ability. It makes them sacrifice something. And I have not been seeing a lot of token generating things going on. I think this is actually a 3.5, maybe even a 4. This is actually just growing in my mind. So, yeah. So, overall, black looks okay. Like, their creatures and spells are just kind of overcosted in a lot of areas. Like, by the time you get to 4 mana in black, the cards just do not come off worth it unless it's mythic. Massacre Girl looks great. Barb Servitor looks experimental. But cards like Bone Brew, even at 3, is like, I don't want to give them those benefits. So right now, and it's crazy, but I feel like it's white with consistency, blue with kind of cards I want to try and experiment with. Black just has a lot of cards. I'm like, okay, you cool. They got some consistency. They got some things I want to try, but overall, it seems really, really overcosted, and that's what's holding black back to me. All right. So as I said, I was gonna take a break after this session. We got white, blue, and black complete. Next is red into green. I'm gonna take a break, pause, restart my rig, see what's going on, and I will be back later on. If you enjoy my content, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe, and share. Helps the channel to grow. And as always, you guys are fantastic. My name is Mr. Clintastik. I will catch you guys next time.